Hi, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and here today to talk about mindfulness. And just had a mindfulness moment here where my broadcast was not setting correctly, so apologies for the problems there, the technical side. So today I'm talking about mindfulness, and the reason I want to talk about this is because I'm often asked by people, what does it mean to be mindful? Because it's a big practice in my life, and I want to say it is not about meditation. It is not about doing hours of sitting in a room quietly by yourself. That for some people, that's the way they develop mindfulness, but it's not about that. It's not about having a constant practice around yoga, for example. Those are all great practices, but that's not what mindfulness is. The way I think about mindfulness is being able to be aware of your circumstances and then being able to focus on the right thing that those circumstances require you at that particular moment. So, this is an important ability to be mindful for leaders. Because what do we have as leaders? We have constant inputs coming from all around the place. Um, External situations, competitors, customers demanding your attention, employees constantly asking for things, complaining about things, having suggestions about how things can be different. And there's so much coming at you. How do you manage all of that? And I do believe that being able to be mindful, aware, and being able to focus is a really key thing as a leader. Sherva has here a great comment that mindfulness is like EQ, emotional intelligence as a leader, and I think that's such a great way to put it. And the thing is that how do you actually put that attention in the right place? So that's what I want to talk about today, is why being mindful is so important to your leadership abilities. And also, how do you bring mindfulness to the workplace? And what are the actions you can take to increase not only your mindfulness, but the mindfulness of your team and your entire organization? So let's get started. So I love this one definition of mindfulness. It comes from John Kabat-Zinn, who is a big leadership and mindfulness person. And he defines mindfulness as the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment, and very importantly, non-judgmentally. Let's break this down a little bit. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose. So this is intentionally putting your attention on the things that require your focus. And as a leader, again, it's so difficult to know what to focus on. And part of that is being aware of just your circumstances around you. What's really going on? What's the truth that's out there? And when I talk to leaders, CEOs, leaders up and down throughout the organization, this is their biggest challenge, is to understand what's really going on. Because once you can understand what's really going on, then you can decide what your options are, and then you can decide what actions you're going to take. If you don't have a grasp of what reality is, then it's very difficult to do anything else. So this is about being able to notice what's going on in that present moment, not be infected by what's happened in the past, not worrying about what's going to happen in the future, but really just thinking about what's really going on right now in this moment. And I want to talk about Jonathan Kabat-Zinn's comment here about being non-judgmental. It's about noticing what's happening and having no reaction to it. Not thinking it's good, it's bad, it just is. There's nothing you can do about what actually is happening right now in this moment. So being able to observe it, to see it for all of what it is a really important aspect of leadership, because no one else around you is going to be able to tell you what's really going on or not. So would love for you all to share, how are you being mindful as a leader in your workplace? And also in your home, in your community too. But how are you using mindfulness? What are the things that you do to be able to be present, to be aware, and to focus on the work that needs to be done? So a couple things I want to just really in particular focus on. One of the ways that we focus and the ways that we don't focus in our lives is what we call being on autopilot. I think about this as I get up in the morning, I look at my calendar, and I just do what my calendar tells me to do. I'll put together a to-do list and kind of prioritize that, but based on which emails, who people are screaming the most, what requires my most immediate, urgent attention, versus being very intentional and saying, what's really going on? What do I need to focus on today? What are the top priorities demanding my focus at this particular moment? Keeping in mind what my goals are, what I want to accomplish, but being also realistic. This is the circumstance I'm in today. So I think there are three things in particular that leadership requires that mindfulness can really help with. And these are the key main benefits. The first one, again, is that focus that I talked about. Your capacity to focus is limited. And so it is your most valuable asset that you have, your attention. So where are you going to put it? Where are you going to focus on things? So being able to focus means stripping away every single distraction that could be coming at your way and staying on track with what you want to accomplish. But it's also stopping doing things automatically, just out of habit, and being much more intentional. And so ask yourself, what are you giving your attention to on a daily basis? So you might keep an attention journal for a couple hours or a day or a week. What did you pay attention to? When were you distracted? When were you multitasking because you felt you had to get a lot of things done and not really focusing on things? And then look at your priorities and say, do they match? If these are your priorities and this is what you're paying attention to and focusing on, do they actually match? So focus is a key benefit that comes out of mindfulness and helping you focus on the right things you want to accomplish as a leader. The second thing that mindfulness does, it gives you a lot of insight because when you're clearly focused on what's going on around you, you get insight into what's really going on, what can you control, and what can't you control. What are things that there's nothing you can do about? And if you can't do anything about it, don't spend any time on that. Don't spend any emotional energy on that. And instead, focus on the things that you can change. Focus on the places where your actions can actually make a difference. And this is not to ignore any negative thoughts or distractions that may come up. It's to recognize it, have it come in, notice it, and then be able to put it aside. Being intentional about focusing on the things that you can do and being aware of and not being distracted by the things you can't do anything about. The other thing about insight it does is that when you actually focus on what's going on, it opens your mind up to all the possibilities. So it allows you to be much more creative, to create divergent ways of thinking, because you are so aware of what's possible, what's not possible, and then you can just focus on the possibilities. So having that sort of growth mindset is a foundational idea behind being mindful, because it allows you to say, what can you actually do that gives you that growth mindset? Again, growth mindsets are such an important trait of effective leaders. And the third real benefit to leaders and a key challenge, staying calm. When everything is coming at you, being able to stay calm and focused is a huge ability for leaders to cultivate. So being able to stay calm and then be able to rapidly adapt to the changing circumstances around you is a key skill. So being able to separate yourself, your well-being from all the things that are happening is a really key part. You don't take things personally because you're able to remove yourself, have that objectivity, that non-judgment again, to look at the situation. And it just allows you to control your reactions. Because again, you can control how you react to the situations. You can't control the situation, but you can control how you react. And the most important thing at that point is to not react, to stay calm. And then you can give your attention to the things that are important to you. What we find in the research, and this has been done over and over again, that if you think about stressful situations in a positive way, when something happens to you, you are going to be just healthier from a mind, emotional, body perspective because you deal with stress in a positive way rather than a reactive and negative way. So mindfulness, again, can help you just reduce your overall stress levels. It may not get rid of the stressful situations, but how you react to it, being able to stay calm, just leads to just a happier, better, less stress-filled life. So I want to go on and talk a little bit about just seeing from people here, some great comments here from people. And so, by the way, so many people participating today. So thank you so much for saying hello. Let's see, Rania has something great to say. Being mindful is about controlling your emotions, reactions, behaviors, so we can be balanced and focused on our goals. And John also says, plan, then adapt to circumstances that come. That's the way that he stays very mindful and focused on things. You can plan, but you're planning not to always have everything figured out, but planning on how you're going to adapt. So I think that these are just great comments and examples. So please keep them coming as we go along here. So I want to talk just very briefly about some of the benefits of mindfulness, not just to being a leader, but also in the workplace, how it can benefit your teams. And just first of all, I think, frankly, if you are mindful in a room of non-mindful people, you actually accumulate power because of your ability to understand the circumstances in the room, to rise above any politics that are happening, to rise around any sort of quick reactions and stresses that people are having. And you say, look, let's step back for a second and look at the circumstances here. This is how I see the world being laid out. And you can lay out things because you're able to stay mindful and present on what's really happening and be able to provide that solid foundation for everyone else to act. That is a tremendous superpower to have. The other thing is it creates highly functional, high-performing teams, because when you can be present in the room and present for everybody else, see people for who they really are, their full selves, you're creating psychological safety for your teams. And that leads to high-performing teams. And then third, again, I just talked about before, being able to manage stressful situations in a workplace. This calms everybody down. And creating this overall mindfulness in a team organization allows everyone to be able to deal with stressful situations, new information coming in a very thoughtful way. So these are all ways that mindfulness is super helpful. Just one other quick comment from Kelly. Nice long comment here. You're so right. Best leaders can always prioritize without bias to address the situation in a mindful way. Their reaction dictates how others are going to react. By keeping calm and collected, it leads our workforce to being also calm and collected, and everyone will produce and be more effective. So Kelly, thank you so much for sharing that insight. Again, I think our experiences from having done this ourselves or having witnessed it is clear indication that mindfulness is a really good thing to do. So I want to move on to being really practical and pragmatic about how to do this. Because the number one objection that I hear from leaders is, I ain't got the time. This is going to take too much time. I don't have time in the middle of my day to go off into a quiet room. There's no quiet room in my office. It's an open plan, whatever. I'm working at home. There's no way I can escape and do like 30 minutes of meditation. That's not what I'm going to talk about today. If you can do that, it's a great practice to have, to be able to pull away, to meditate, to do yoga. These are all great ways to practice mindfulness. Instead, what I'm going to talk about is how do you build mindfulness into your routines every single day? And in particular, how do you practice mindfulness? Because what mindful means, mindful is to remember to be present. And so the examples I'm going to give today are ways for you to be constantly reminding yourself to be present, to be mindful of the situation around you. Because again, it is not something that we practice intuitively. Our default mode is to just be on autopilot, to not be intentional, not to be present, not to be mindful. So you actually have to build these practices in. That's why it's called a practice, because you do it all the time. So the ways I'm going to talk about today are ways to build mindfulness into your everyday routine so they become a habit, something that you can build in and just do automatically to practice mindfulness. So we're going to go into how do we create that autopilot part of being mindful, which is, again, using our human nature to go into autopilot, to do things by habit. And we know that the most powerful habits are the ones that really change our lives. So the very first thing is to breathe. And this is, again, we can incorporate breathing into our daily routines all the time because it's the most natural thing that we do. Breathe in and then breathe out. So just take a moment right now and just take a deep breath. Breathe in and then breathe out. And the beauty of this is that when you're breathing in, focusing on your breath and saying, how does it feel to pull in that energy into your body? And then as you're breathing out, to expel it back into the world. And you get this moment of just being focused on your breath because we always have our breath with us. And it takes seconds to do. And I hope that just taking that one deep breath with me, you just feel a bit of clarity, a little bit more centered, focused on the words that I'm saying right now. And what that does, again, just breathing is the most beautiful cleansing thing that you can do. So one of the things I do is in between meetings, I just take a couple deep breaths. I think about using that time to just focus, clear my thoughts of everything, just breathe. And then I can recognize I just finished this meeting. What are the takeaways from that? And then also, how do I prepare myself for the next meeting? So instead of running from meeting to meeting, literally in between meetings, I take a couple of deep breaths now because it's so automatic. And I take that moment to really focus on what just happened and what's happening coming up so I can be present in that exact moment. And that breathing is a reminder for me now to do that. The other times I breathe is when I recognize I'm feeling stressed, something's going at me, I'm feeling discombobulated. So my natural thing is to take a moment and to take a breath so that I can get more centered, be more aware, and then decide how I want to focus. Just stepping back just for those microseconds that it takes to take a breath is such an powerful thing to do for yourself as a leader. So take breaths, build it in. Recognize when these emotions are coming up, when the circumstances are coming at you, and take a moment to take a deep breath. All right, so hope you can incorporate breathing into the routines. And literally, I build it into my day in between meetings. I literally take a couple of deep breaths in between meetings as I'm leaving a meeting, as I'm waiting for my next Zoom meeting or my next Teams meeting to start. I'm just sitting there taking a bunch of deep breaths. And it's such a great way doing that interstitial time to just have that little mindful moment. A second thing I do is at my meetings, it can be virtual, it could be not. When I walk into a meeting, I spend the first few moments being really present, looking around the room, looking around the screen, looking at each person. How are they entering the room? How do I want to be present for them? What are we trying to achieve in this meeting? How are we going to talk about things? And I just look around and notice the energy levels of people, listen with curiosity for just the first few minutes to ground myself, be focused on that meeting and what we want to accomplish. Versus walking in Autopilot thinking, oh, phew, I'm here on time. Okay, now what's the meeting about? Being very intentional and purposeful at the beginning of a meeting and being focused just for the first few minutes. Again, this is a practice. So you may just pick one meeting a day to do this. And then maybe you start doing it for 2 meetings. And then maybe you start doing it for more than just the first few minutes. You do it for a little bit longer, maybe extend it to 5 or 7 minutes. And over time, you can practice, again, remembering to practice being present in your meetings with people, one-on-one, in group meetings, whether you're leading it or a participant, being fully present so that you can see everything that's happening. Because if you're going to be in a meeting, I hope that it's a meaningful one that you are needed to participate in because of your input, because of the way that the decisions need to be made, that you're being fully present. And I have other live streams I've done where I talk about how to have effective meetings. If you're not there to add any value, then you have to ask yourself, why am I here? And if I need to be here, can I actually skip this meeting because it's not really helping me focus on the things that need my attention? So thinking about meetings, how you start them, and how you are present in them at the very beginning can be a great way to build this again into your everyday. The third thing I would say is to wake up your senses, to use the things that you do every day, the routines that you have. But instead of doing them on autopilot, use them as little moments of mindfulness to really focus on things. So one of my favorite things is washing my hands. We wash our hands all the time, especially with COVID. We wash them when we come into the house, after you use the bathroom, before you eat. We wash our hands all the time. And it's a very automatic thing that we do. Take that time when you're soaping up to really feel the water and the soap on your hands, to be fully present at that moment. And what that does is just resets everything that you have. So as you're transitioning to the next thing, you're calm, you're focused, you're being present, and then intentionally flexing those muscles again of being present and intentional. It could be waking up and walking out into your room, looking at every single step and feeling the ground underneath you. It could be the first 3 bites of your meal that you have, to really taste the food, to enjoy the texture, being fully present in that moment. And you may be thinking to yourself, what does this have to do with leadership again? Being able to taste my food, really taste it. It is, again, this practice of being fully present in a small little thing of your everyday, being able to focus on something with intensity and intention that allows you then to move that practice into other areas of your life, to be truly focused on something too. It is something that's so hard to block out all that noise in your life and around you to be able to focus on something at that particular moment. If we can do it in a small little moments in our day, like things like washing our hands or eating our food, things we do all the time, then we can extend that practice into other areas of our lives too. The other thing I would encourage you to do is to, if you commute, for example, if you're walking someplace, instead of just automatically getting in the car, turning on the radio, listening to the music, maybe for the first 10 minutes of your commute back home, just to turn that off and be present. Feel you're in a car, feel the air conditioning on your skin, and just be present in that moment. Clear out the clutter of the day as you're going home, and taking that moment to just be present and then reflect on what's happened, and then also prepare yourself for going home. Same thing, going to work, doing the same thing. I have little routines when I come to my desk at home that I set up to remind myself to be mindful about how I start the day and to set my priorities and my intentions for the day. So these little moments of transition can become mindful moments too. 2 more things. If you want to take this more public with your team, at the beginning of a meeting, maybe ask people just to take 3 deep breaths together. Doesn't take much time, but as people are gathering, you just say, okay, as we're gathering here, let's take 3 deep breaths together. It may feel really awkward doing that at first time, but just asking people to breathe in, hold it at the top, and then breathe out. And then at the end of the third one, you don't have to close your eyes. You can keep your eyes open or close your eyes, whatever you want. Just say, welcome to the meeting. Look around, see who's here, be present for each other, and then let's get going. It doesn't take a lot, but we know that everyone's coming into meetings and they're distracted because they just probably had to get a kid off to school, or they just came out of a meeting, they're running late. And how do you focus everybody on what's at hand? Meetings are incredibly important. It's a huge and important use of people's time and their attention. So you want to make sure everyone is focused on what you're trying to get focused on and to accomplish. And having this centering moment, and you don't have to call it a meditation, just want to center on what we want to accomplish and be present for each other in the room. So again, simple ways to begin meetings. Sometimes we're running late, whatever. Let's just take 1 deep breath and center and focus and be present for each other. It's a reminder for ourselves to be mindful of being present. And the last thing I would say is to have gratitude, to keep a gratitude journal for yourself, and also to have gratitude for each other in the workplace, to express that, to actually ask people, what are we grateful for today? What's happened that's great that you're grateful for? And people can volunteer or not. And the reason why this is important is that as humans, we have something called a negativity bias. We tend to look at things in a negative way, versus having gratitude says, wow, I am so lucky. I so appreciate and have gratitude for the things that are around me and for the people that are around me. So having gratitude focuses you on the things that are going right versus the things that have gone wrong. Appreciations for the things that are just wonderful in the world, for the people who are just great, versus all the things that could be pulling us down. Again, being mindful of these things, being able to be non-judgmental and pushing against that negativity bias is such an important thing. I've done more around gratitude in some of my work. So let me please just go and search for my stuff that has a lot of work around how to actually practice gratitude as a leader in the workplace. So that's what I have for today. I want to make sure that we have a couple, there's a lot of comments in here. So I want to make sure we get into this too as well. And Cindy talks about how I love how this ties into creating psychological safety for all to participate, innovate, especially as a team. We can practice, Rania says, practice mindfulness by paying attention to our posture, our body language. Such a great point. Because are we present of how we are in meetings? Sometimes I'm feeling low energy and I realize I'm slouching on my seat. The message I'm sending to people is like, I don't have energy to be in this room to be with you. And by being present of myself, I just kind of sit up. I feel the energy coming back into me and it emanates into the room too as well. So being present and attention to how you're presenting yourself is so important. Marissa has this to share. As we as leaders can calmly provide the tools and the structure with the end vision while our team works through the process of achieving the common goals. And Marissa, I love this point because who else besides you as a leader can provide that vision, that purpose, the goals, the objectives, in keeping absolutely focused on that. Again, mindfulness is a great way to be able to remind people, remember people, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And I guarantee you, every time you do that, people will look around like, oh yeah, that's right. So keep doing this until people stop looking surprised is the key thing. It's just, we have to constantly remind people, this is where we're heading. This is the vision of what we're trying to accomplish. John says, again, this whole idea of the breathing, the mindfulness, it recenters you. It requires your presence to be able to make all this happen. Absolutely true. And it's what builds teamwork, John says. It definitely builds the teamwork and requires that too as well. Lynn has a great comment here about gratitude. Gratitude is the start of all good. I love this. Teachability, the peace of mind, attractiveness to others, inspiration, high achievements, it's all there. And it all starts with gratitude. I think, again, gratitude is a key component of humility. We often talk about how many times humility is the foundation of great leadership. Jim Collins talks about in his research in Good to Great that looked at the one common characteristic amongst the leaders of these great companies, and it was humility. And they practiced just tremendous gratitude and that recognition that they could never have done this alone. And it's such a different message that we hear sometimes from these very public leaders who really trumpet themselves and talk about how great their achievements are, when really it was a whole team of people behind them. And the most humble leaders are the most grateful ones that constantly acknowledge the people and appreciate people around them to say, we're here because of all of us together. And then, so again, I think there's Cindy is just reiterating, this is so much tied into emotional intelligence, emotional quotients, and the ability to, again, just be connected. I think not to be emotional, but to be able to understand your emotions, to see them, recognize them, and decide and choose how you want to react to that situation. One of the things I've been known for is to being able to stay calm in pretty stressful situations. And I think part of it, again, I attribute to this practice around just recognizing what's coming at me. And especially working with my emotions. It's not to say I don't have emotions, but to understand how my emotions can be tapped into, used, set aside as needed for the circumstances around me. So again, I think that being able to tap into and understand that at this moment, I'm feeling really angry, but also understanding that being angry in this particular moment is not going to help the situation. So I'm going to let that go. I'm going to put my anger right here where I can see it. I can tap into that and then use my mindfulness, my intention, my focus on what actually has to be done to deal with the situation. That anger is still there. Believe me, I'm still angry, but instead of acting out and letting the anger control me, I am in the place where I can make the changes necessary and being mindful of what is possible and what's not possible. So I hope that this has helped, and helping you think about the importance of being mindful, but also giving you some very practical ways of how you can work mindfulness into every single part of your day. And again, this is something that I learned more than 10 years ago with a workshop where a leader who was very experienced in creating mindful moments came and just worked with a group that I was in as leaders to say, how do you build mindfulness into your daily routines? And so while it's still super helpful to go and do meditations, I regularly go on meditation retreats to just get focused and away from things so that I can, again, get that perspective. But being able to build it into your everyday is a great way, again, of making it a practice, making it a habit of something that you can do to bring mindfulness into your life. So just a couple other things I just want to tell you about. So next week, I'll be talking about how to find harmony in work and life. I don't like to use the word balance, and we'll talk more about that because the pressure of finding the perfect balance between work and life is really, really difficult. Instead, I really strive for having harmony. And so we'll talk about how to have more harmony in your work and life, how to make all that work together. And we'll have some insights. And please bring your ideas of how to find harmony into our conversation next week. Until then, please take care. Good luck and all the best with your practicing your mindfulness as a leader. And if nothing else, just take lots of deep breaths. I guarantee you, you will feel better with every single breath that you take in an intentional way. Take care, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks.